The decision of the Galactic Council came like a storm no one expected, even though signs had been gathering for years. It happened on a day when humanity believed things would finally improve. For the first time, their representatives were allowed to stand in front of thousands of alien delegates, each belonging to civilizations that were far older and far more powerful than humanity. Many people back on Earth and in the colonies watched the broadcast with hope. They believed the Council would finally understand that humans were not trying to threaten anyone. They only wanted a chance to grow, to learn, and to survive in a galaxy much bigger than they ever imagined. But the moment the Council chamber lights dimmed and the final votes began, the mood changed. The hall grew quiet, almost heavy. Humanity's main representative stood at a small platform surrounded by towering figures, some shaped like tall pillars of light, some with wings, some with shifting bodies that never stayed still. The representative took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Every human watching felt the same nervousness, deep in their chest. The first display screen lit up with the symbols of the Council. Each glowing mark represented a decision, and each carried weight that could decide the fate of entire civilizations. One by one, the symbols turned from neutral blue to accusing red. The votes were being cast. No one spoke. No one moved. Even the machines in the chamber seemed to work more quietly than usual. When the final mark turned red, a soft chime echoed through the hall, and the head counselor, a being who looked like a floating cluster of glass threads, spoke in a calm, emotionless voice. The message was simple and final. Humanity would be exiled. Not punished with war, not destroyed, but pushed out. Removed from the known regions of the galaxy, forced to live in the uncharted spaces where no maps existed. For a moment, no one knew how to react. The human representative tried to speak, but the microphone shut down automatically. It wasn't cruel. It was simply procedure. Exile was a rare rule, but once passed, it gave no room for debate. The council guards stepped forward, their faces expressionless, and signaled politely, but firmly, that the representative must leave. Back on Earth, the broadcast cut suddenly to a screen that simply said the vote was complete. People stared at their screens in disbelief. Some cried. Some shouted in frustration. Others simply sat in silence, feeling a pain they could not put into words. Humans had always suspected the Council, never fully trusted them. But exile felt like being pushed out of the entire galaxy. It felt like being told they did not belong anywhere. The decision spread quickly across every colony Mars, the outposts near Jupiter, the mining stations around distant stars. People left their jobs and rushed to community halls and meeting centers to hear statements from leaders. The leaders themselves had no answers to give. They had only heard the decision minutes before everyone else. Within hours, ships from the Council arrived near Earth's orbit with the official order. Humanity had exactly 1 year to gather their people, their technology, and their supplies, and leave Council space. The routes they could take were limited to safe corridors that ended at the edge of a massive dark region of space. After that, they would be on their own. The reason behind the exile was complicated. Some species in the Council had grown afraid of humanity's speed of progress. Humans learned quickly. In just a few centuries, they jumped from basic space travel to advanced technologies that other species took thousands of years to develop. Some members of the Council argued that this growth was natural and that humanity should be supported. But other members feared that humans might one day surpass them, become unpredictable, or challenge the balance of power. The loudest voices in the Council were the ones who saw humanity as a threat. With enough pressure, they convinced the rest. Even so, not every alien civilization agreed with the decision. A few quietly reached out to humans with messages of sympathy, though they could not openly oppose the Council's ruling. They warned humanity that the exile was not just a punishment, but also a political move. Someone wanted humans out of the way. Someone powerful. While Earth was in chaos, the human representative who had stood before the council sat quietly inside a small transport vessel returning home. They looked out at the bright bands of stars passing by the window. Their chest felt heavy, not just from disappointment, but from the weight of what would come next. Leading millions of frightened people into the unknown was not what they expected their life to become. The transport ship returned to Earth under a dim sunrise. Crowds had gathered around spaceports and government buildings, hoping to hear something positive, something that could ease the fear spreading like wildfire. When the representative stepped out, the silence was overwhelming. Everyone waited. Even the air felt still. They began speaking slowly, explaining everything they had seen, everything they had heard, and how final the council's decision truly was. People listened with sadness, anger, and confusion. Some citizens demanded that humanity fight back. Others insisted they obey the order to avoid war. A few even believed exile could become a strange new opportunity. But despite the many opinions, one clear truth rose above everything. Humanity would have to leave the galaxy regions they once believed were their future. The year that followed became a tense and emotional time. Every human worked together in ways they had never done before. Engineers upgraded ships, turning ordinary transport vessels into long-distance carriers. Scientists prepared life support systems that could last decades. Families packed belongings, unsure if they would ever see their old homes again. Artists painted murals on the ships, telling stories of Earth and the places they came from. Farmers helped prepare seed vaults, ensuring that the plants and foods of their world would survive wherever they went. People began calling the movement the Great Departure. It started as a whisper, then became a phrase repeated with determination rather than fear. Slowly, humanity stopped thinking of exile as a defeat and started seeing it as the beginning of something new. Still, the pain did not fade easily. The idea of leaving their home forever left a deep ache in every heart. As the day of departure approached, Earth's skies filled with the largest fleet ever assembled by humans. Hundreds of ships, large and small, formed long formations like glowing ribbons across the sky. Some ships carried entire city populations. Others held research teams, builders, or families that wanted to stay close to one another. People gathered at windows, watching the ships rise like bright stars leaving their cradle. When the final countdown began, Earth's communication networks opened for one last global message. The representative appeared on every screen. They spoke softly, reminding people that the council may have turned them away, but they still had each other. They reminded everyone that humans had survived countless challenges in their history wars, disasters, and moments when hope seemed impossible. This exile was only another test. The engines of the fleet roared to life. One by one, the ships lifted off. The oceans reflected their light. The mountains glowed faintly beneath them. People said goodbye to Earth, some with tears, some with quiet pride. They promised they would carry the memory of their home with them into the unknown. Crossing the boundary of the council space was not dramatic. There was no bright line, no sound, but everyone inside the ships felt it. It felt like stepping through a door that closed behind them forever. Ahead lay empty space, darker, quieter, and stranger than anything they had seen. Humanity had been exiled, but they carried a spark inside them that no one could take away. They had been pushed out, but they were not broken. They moved forward with fear, yes, but also with strength. Because somewhere ahead, in the uncharted void, they hoped to find not just survival, but a place where they could build a life free from the judgment of others. And although none of them could see the future yet, a new chapter had begun, one that would shape them in ways no one could imagine. The fleet moved forward into the darkness of space, leaving behind the worlds they had known. The stars around them seemed colder and further apart than anyone remembered. There were no familiar constellations, no guiding signals from neighboring civilizations. Only the faint glimmer of distant suns offered any sense of direction. For the first time, humanity truly realized they were alone in the vastness, without the rules of the council, without any authority to appeal to, without anyone to guide them. The first few weeks were tense. People tried to carry on with their daily routines, but the emptiness pressed down on them. The ships were crowded, and resources, though carefully prepared, were still limited. Engineers worked around the clock to ensure that engines ran smoothly and life support systems stayed operational. Scientists monitored every reading, every pulse from nearby stars, hoping for signs of planets that might be habitable. Families huddled together in small cabins, sharing memories and hopes while others sat in silence, staring at starfields that stretched endlessly beyond their windows. Some people could not hold back their fear. Arguments broke out among the passengers. Some blamed the council for their exile. Others blamed human leadership for not preventing it. Tensions flared in small ways, at first shouting matches in corridors, disagreements about rationing, debates about whether to take risks exploring unknown areas. But the leaders, having prepared for this eventuality, moved quickly to calm the disputes. They held meetings on every ship, not as lectures, but as conversations. They explained the importance of staying calm, of working together, and of trusting that humanity's strength lay in unity. Slowly, the anger and frustration began to shift into determination. It was during this time that the first discoveries of the void began. A team of scientists monitoring the instruments noticed strange energy readings that did not match anything in the council's archives. It pulsed in rhythms that seemed almost alive, and it came from areas of space that were completely uncharted. The discovery caused excitement and fear at the same time. Could this be a new source of power? Or was it a danger they had never imagined? Exploration ships were quickly dispatched to study the phenomenon. Small crews, each composed of engineers, scientists, and trained navigators, went toward the unknown zones. For days, they sent back readings that were both baffling and fascinating. Some energy signatures suggested abandoned civilizations, long gone. Others hinted at natural phenomena, unlike anything humans had ever encountered. The discoveries reminded everyone that although they were exiled, they had the chance to uncover secrets that no one else had ever seen. It was a spark of hope in a time of uncertainty. Life in the fleet also forced humans to adapt to a new rhythm. Every day was measured not by sunlight or moon cycles, but by the rotation of the ships, the schedules for food, work, and rest. Children who had only known Earth and its colonies learned to move in zero gravity, to sleep in compact quarters, and to play with simulations instead of open fields. Adults balanced the needs of work with the demands of their families, learning to trust neighbors they had never met before. Communities began forming in new ways. Leadership was no longer distant. Decisions were made openly, with input from those affected. People learned to rely on each other for support in ways they had never needed before. Despite the hardships, moments of joy emerged. Small celebrations marked achievements like discovering a new star system, fixing a failing engine, or growing the first crops in hydroponic farms. Families held quiet ceremonies for birthdays and milestones, even while floating hundreds of light years from any known civilization. Music, storytelling, and art flourished in the cramped spaces. People realized that even in exile, humanity could carry its culture, its creativity, and its hope into the unknown. Tensions were never completely gone. Space was unforgiving, and the fleet faced constant reminders of their fragility. Meteoroids occasionally passed too close for comfort, sending vibrations through the halls. Systems sometimes failed despite careful maintenance. Illness spread quickly in confined quarters, and the medical teams worked tirelessly to prevent outbreaks. Each challenge reminded the fleet that survival depended not on individual brilliance, but on collective effort and trust. One of the most difficult challenges came from the psychological weight of exile. For many, the idea that they would never see Earth again was almost unbearable. People spoke of lost cities, of oceans and forests, of streets where they had walked as children. Memories became both comfort and burden. Counselors worked with families and individuals, teaching ways to cope with grief and uncertainty. Story circles were created, where people could share experiences and reflect together. Slowly, the fleet began to form a new identity, not defined by the worlds they had lost, but by the world they were creating together. As the fleet traveled deeper into uncharted space, new kinds of wonders appeared. Nebulae shimmered in colors that no human eye had ever seen. Strange planets loomed in silence, some with rings that glowed faintly, some with skies so thick with clouds that no surface could be seen. The fleet's sensors detected anomalies in gravity, radiation, and magnetic fields. Engineers and scientists spent hours analyzing the readings, often marveling at the complexity of the universe. It became clear that the galaxy was far larger and stranger than anyone had imagined, and that humanity had barely scratched the surface of its mysteries. The leadership also began to think long-term. They knew they could not simply wander forever. Supplies were limited, and the unknown regions could hold dangers far worse than anything they had faced before. The Council's maps ended abruptly, leaving vast areas blank. Humanity needed a home, a place to rest, to grow, and to build a new society. Reconnaissance teams were sent out to scan promising star systems, looking for planets with water, breathable atmospheres, and resources to sustain life. Every decision was debated carefully. One wrong choice could cost thousands of lives. After months of exploration, the fleet discovered its first uninhabited, habitable planet. It was smaller than Earth, but had forests, rivers, and mountains. The air was clean, the skies bright, and the climate mild. It was not perfect, but it was enough to sustain life. The leaders decided to settle temporarily, using the planet as a base while they continued their search for more worlds. Engineers built landing facilities, life support systems, and farms. Families began moving to the surface, planting seeds, and building shelters. Children ran along the rivers, laughing as if the weight of exile lifted. At least for a moment, life on the new planet was not easy. The soil required treatment before crops could grow. The atmosphere had slight differences that humans needed to adapt to. Unexpected storms occasionally forced entire communities to retreat to shelters. Yet each challenge was met with cooperation. People learned new skills, shared knowledge, and supported each other. They were no longer just humans exiled from their home. They were explorers, builders, and pioneers in a galaxy that had not yet seen them. As the fleet expanded across nearby moons and smaller planets, the settlers began to form new systems of governance. They held meetings in town halls built from local materials and old ship components. Leaders were elected based on skill and wisdom, not wealth or influence. Laws were designed to protect the community and ensure that no one could be left behind. Humanity, for the first time, had the freedom to define itself without interference. They could experiment, innovate, and learn from their mistakes. Evenings on the new planet became a time for reflection. People would gather around small fires or light sources, looking at the stars and thinking about home. They shared stories about Earth, about the Council, and about their journey through the void. Some spoke with sadness, some with hope. All realized that their exile had changed them in ways that would never be undone. They were stronger, more united, and more capable than they had ever been. Months turned into years. The temporary settlement grew into a small, thriving community. Hydroponic farms expanded, workshops multiplied, and children born on the planet began to grow up knowing only this new home. Humanity had survived the void, discovered wonders, adapted to challenges, and begun to imagine a future of its own making. The experience of exile, though painful, had taught them lessons about resilience, cooperation, and hope that no council ruling could ever take away. And still, every human in the fleet and on the planet understood one thing clearly: their journey was only beginning. The void held more mysteries, more dangers, and more possibilities than they could imagine. Each day was a test, each star a question, and each decision a choice that could shape the future of humanity. Yet for the first time in a long while, they felt the quiet thrill of discovery, the pride of independence, and the deep, unshakable belief that even in exile, humanity could thrive. Humanity had been wandering through uncharted space for years. The fleet, once a moving collection of fear and anger, had become something stronger. People had grown used to the rhythm of life in the void, adapting to the endless darkness of space and the strange beauty of alien stars. They had learned to survive, to organize, and to explore. But there was still a dream burning quietly in the hearts of everyone: finding a world they could truly call home. After long months of scanning unknown star systems, the fleet finally discovered a region filled with planets untouched by any known civilization. At first, they were cautious. Some planets were lifeless, barren rocks spinning slowly in the cold void. Others had violent storms or toxic atmospheres. But one planet, slightly smaller than Earth, stood out. Its skies were a soft golden hue at dawn and deep violet at night. Rivers ran through forests that stretched beyond the eye, and mountains rose tall and majestic. The planet seemed alive in a way that no sensor could fully capture. The leaders decided to settle there, at least temporarily, while further surveys were conducted. The fleet descended carefully, landing ships one by one on clear plains. People poured out onto the surface, feeling the crunch of soil under their feet and the warmth of sunlight on their faces. For some, it was the first time they had felt solid ground in decades. Children ran across the fields, laughing freely, while adults shared quiet smiles, almost afraid to believe that this new home could be real. The first weeks were filled with work and wonder. Scientists tested the air, water, and soil, confirming that it was safe for human life. Engineers began constructing shelters, using materials from the ships and local resources. Hydroponic farms were expanded, ensuring a steady supply of food. People learned to adapt to subtle differences in gravity and atmospheric pressure. Even small tasks, like walking on uneven ground or collecting water from rivers, required practice and patience. But each challenge was met with cooperation and determination. Life on the planet was not without danger. Strange storms swept across the plains, sometimes flooding rivers or knocking down newly built structures. Some plants and insects were unfamiliar, causing unexpected allergic reactions or minor injuries. The fleet's medical teams worked tirelessly to prevent accidents from becoming disasters. Every problem was approached carefully, with both caution and curiosity. Humans were explorers in the truest sense, learning to live in a place where nothing was guaranteed and everything was new. As the settlement expanded, people began thinking beyond survival. Schools were established for children, where they could learn about Earth, the void, and their new planet. Workshops and laboratories were built for scientists and engineers to study alien materials and local phenomena. Community centers were created for meetings, celebrations, and storytelling. Even in the midst of hardship, culture flourished. Music, art, and literature became ways to process the strange new world and to keep humanity's spirit alive. The planet itself seemed to respond to human presence. Rivers provided fresh water, fertile soil yielded abundant crops, and forests offered both beauty and resources. Engineers began experimenting with energy systems, tapping into small rivers and winds to power settlements. Children learned to explore safely guided by adults who had once walked on Earth's continents. People slowly began to feel that this place, far from everything they had known, could truly be their home. Exploration teams were sent to nearby moons and smaller planets in the system. They discovered minerals and resources that would support expansion. Some moons had rare metals useful for technology, while others offered safe habitats for smaller communities. Each discovery increased humanity's confidence. The fleet was no longer just surviving. It was thriving. Decisions about where to settle, how to organize, and what to build were debated openly. Leadership became collaborative, emphasizing wisdom and fairness over authority. The social bonds among humans grew stronger. Families, once separated during the long voyage, reunited. Neighbors helped one another construct homes, repair machinery, and tend crops. Friendships formed across generations, and a sense of shared purpose developed. People realized that the exile which had once caused fear and resentment had become the foundation for a society built on cooperation, trust, and resilience. One day, while exploring a dense forest, a small team discovered ruins of an ancient civilization. Strange markings covered stones and walls, but no life remained. The structures were advanced, suggesting that a once powerful species had lived and thrived here long before humans arrived. Scholars were both fascinated and cautious. The ruins reminded everyone that even great civilizations could disappear. Humanity had to be careful, but they also had the chance to learn from the past, to study technology and ideas left behind, and to build something enduring. The discovery of the ruins inspired people to think beyond immediate survival. A council was formed to guide the development of the settlement. It was composed of elected representatives from every ship and community. Their decisions were based on discussion, evidence, and consensus. Laws were written to protect individuals, encourage collaboration, and prevent abuse of power. For the first time, humanity was governing itself freely, without outside interference, and learning the true meaning of responsibility. Technology began to advance rapidly. Scientists experimented with energy sources discovered during the voyage, creating devices that could generate power more efficiently than anything used before. Engineers built structures that combined Earth designs with innovations adapted to the new environment. The fleet's ships were upgraded, allowing them to explore further and more safely. Humanity was no longer just a collection of survivors. It was becoming an empire in the making. Despite progress, challenges remained. Storms, unpredictable terrain, and occasional failures in technology tested the settlers daily. Food and water supply required constant attention. Morale was sometimes low, and homesickness for Earth never completely disappeared. But through every trial, people relied on one another. Shared effort, mutual respect, and the hope of a better future kept the community moving forward. Children who were born on the planet learned about Earth as a story, a memory passed down by parents. They learned about the Council, the exile, and the long journey through the void. They also learned about the importance of unity, courage, and innovation. For them, this new world was not a punishment or a loss. It was the only world they had ever known, and it offered limitless possibility. The first harvest from the hydroponic farms brought a sense of celebration. People gathered in open spaces, sharing food, music, and laughter. The crops were a symbol of their perseverance, of life continuing despite hardship, and of hope for the future. Elders spoke of Earth with reverence, but they also spoke of the new world with pride. Children ran through fields that stretched endlessly, learning the meaning of freedom in a way that adults rarely had the chance to experience. The fleet and the settlers began to plan for expansion. They mapped nearby planets and moons, considering which areas could support life and which could be left as reserves for resources. Trade and communication networks were established between settlements. Knowledge and discoveries were shared freely. Humanity's society became more organized, efficient. and resilient with each passing month. One evening, as the twin suns of the planet set, people gathered on a hill overlooking the settlement. They watched the sky change colors, from gold to deep violet, and felt a sense of wonder and accomplishment. They had left the galaxy they once knew, survived the void, discovered a new world, and begun to thrive. For the first time since exile, humanity felt truly at home. And yet a quiet curiosity lingered. Beyond the system, the galaxy remained vast and largely unexplored. The Council, the civilizations that had once judged humanity, and the mysteries of the universe all remained out there, waiting. The people understood that their journey was far from over. But now, with a home to build from and a society that had learned to trust itself, humanity was ready for whatever came next. They had survived exile, and in doing so, they had begun to forge the foundations of an empire of their own in this new world. Humans had learned an essential truth. The universe was not something to fear, but something to understand and explore together. They were no longer defined by the judgment of others, by exile, or by fear. They were defined by their courage, their creativity, and the strength they found in one another. And with that understanding, humanity's first real home in the void had become a place of hope, discovery, and the promise of a future far beyond anything they had imagined. Years passed, and humanity on the new planet grew stronger. The settlement had expanded into a small network of communities, each connected by paths, communication networks, and trade routes. People no longer thought of themselves as exiles or wanderers. They were settlers, builders, and explorers. Children born on the planet grew up knowing only this world, learning to navigate forests, rivers, and mountains, while also hearing stories of Earth and a long journey through the void. The planet, which had once seemed wild and untamed, was now shaped by human hands. Fields were cultivated, towns and villages constructed, and small cities began to take form. Engineers and architects combined old Earth designs with innovations suited to the new environment. Buildings were designed to withstand storms, harvest rainwater, and capture solar energy efficiently. Transportation systems connected distant communities, allowing resources, knowledge, and people to move easily across the settlement. Every new structure or system was a reminder that humans were no longer just surviving. They were building a future. Science advanced at a pace that astonished even the most optimistic thinkers. Energy technologies discovered in the void, combined with the planet's natural resources, allowed humanity to create power systems far beyond anything they had used before. Ships that had carried them across the stars were upgraded with better engines, navigation systems, and protective shields. Researchers experimented with local minerals, discovering unique properties that could be applied to medicine, technology, and construction. Humanity was learning not only to survive, but to thrive in ways the Council had never expected. Yet, the human leaders never forgot the lessons of exile. They had been judged and cast out, and they understood the danger of pride or arrogance. Governance was based on discussion, consensus, and fairness. Every community had representatives who met regularly to address problems, share knowledge, and make decisions for the greater good. Leadership was earned through action, wisdom, and service, rather than inherited or forced. These lessons became part of the planet's growing culture, shaping a society that valued trust, responsibility, and cooperation above all else. Despite the progress, challenges continued. Storms could sweep through forests and plains, damaging homes and crops. Strange diseases sometimes appeared, requiring quick responses from medical teams. Equipment failed unexpectedly, and some settlements faced shortages of resources. Yet, each challenge brought people closer together. Communities developed rapid response teams, built stronger infrastructure, and shared knowledge across the planet. Every problem became an opportunity to innovate, to learn, and to grow stronger. Exploration did not stop. Humanity continued to send teams to nearby planets and moons, mapping resources, studying environments, and identifying places for future expansion. Some moons had metals and minerals essential for technological progress. Others had safe environments suitable for new settlements. Teams discovered signs of alien life in remote areas, small creatures, and plants. Unlike anything found on Earth, scientists studied these forms carefully, respecting the balance of life while learning lessons that could be applied to human society. The discovery of these resources and life forms brought a new level of excitement and purpose. People realized that humanity could not remain confined to a single planet. Their knowledge, technology, and spirit could support growth across an entire star system. Plans were made for colonies on moons, for research stations in orbit, and for experimental settlements on distant planets. Every expansion was deliberate, designed to protect life, use resources wisely, and create a society that could endure. Cultural life flourished alongside technology. Music, art, and storytelling became central to human life. Communities held festivals to celebrate harvests, discoveries, and achievements. Artists used new materials to create sculptures, paintings, and instruments that reflected the beauty of the planet. Writers and storytellers preserved the history of Earth, the journey through the void, and the triumphs and struggles of the new settlements. Children learned not only science and survival skills, but also the values of creativity, empathy, and curiosity. Relationships among people grew deeper as well. Families supported one another through challenges. Friendships crossed communities, generations, and professions. Older generations passed down lessons about Earth, about resilience, and about the importance of unity. Younger generations contributed new ideas, innovations, and energy. Together, humanity built a culture that respected the past but focused on the future. The planet had become not just a home, but a society where humans could grow into the best versions of themselves. The leadership faced a new challenge, ensuring that progress did not lead to inequality or corruption. With multiple settlements growing at different rates, resources and opportunities could have been hoarded or misused. But the council system worked efficiently. Regular meetings, transparent decision-making, and open communication ensured that everyone had a voice. Problems were addressed quickly, and successes were celebrated collectively. Humanity learned the value of accountability, fairness, and shared responsibility, lessons born from exile and hard experience. Technology and exploration began to merge with everyday life. Transportation systems allowed people to travel quickly between settlements, while automated systems supported farming, construction, and energy production. Communication networks connected communities across vast distances. Students on one planet could interact with scientists and educators on another. Knowledge flowed freely, and innovation accelerated as ideas spread rapidly. The settlement that had once been a temporary refuge had grown into a hub of activity, learning, and discovery. One day, explorers discovered a cave system deep in a mountain range. The caves contained mineral deposits and strange glowing crystals. Scientists studied the crystals carefully, discovering properties that could improve energy systems, medical devices, and technology. The discovery brought renewed excitement to the settlement. Engineers began designing devices using the crystals, while educators taught students about the possibilities they represented. The planet seemed to offer endless resources for growth, but humans remained careful to preserve the balance of nature. Humanity's understanding of the universe also grew. They observed distant stars, studied celestial phenomena, and recorded the behavior of planets and moons. They began to map uncharted regions beyond their system, preparing for future exploration. The sense of curiosity that had driven them across the void now fueled scientific inquiry. Every discovery, whether of a distant galaxy or a local rock formation, became a reason to celebrate, to learn, and to imagine the future. Social bonds were strengthened by shared achievements. Celebrations marked milestones in science, exploration, and culture. Communities held assemblies to honor individuals who contributed selflessly to the greater good. Children learned the importance of cooperation, innovation, and responsibility through active participation in these societies. Humanity was growing not just technologically, but emotionally and socially. The lessons of exile humility, resilience, and unity remained deeply ingrained in daily life. Despite the success, memories of the Council in exile were never forgotten. Elders told stories of the journey, of the fear, the loneliness, and the determination required to survive. These stories were not meant to foster bitterness, but to remind humanity of what they had endured and what they were capable of achieving. They became lessons for future generations, emphasizing courage, foresight, and the power of working together. As the settlements grew, leaders began to plan for long-term sustainability. Education, health, infrastructure, and resource management became priorities. Scientists experimented with agriculture, medicine, and energy to ensure that humanity could thrive for generations. The planet, once wild and untamed, was now a carefully managed ecosystem where humans lived in harmony with their environment. Every success strengthened the community's sense of identity and purpose. Even as humanity focused on growth, they remained curious about the larger galaxy. Signals from distant stars were monitored carefully. Scientists speculated about the presence of other civilizations, unknown dangers, and unexplored regions. Some wondered if the Council, their former judges, might still be watching. But rather than fear, these questions inspired preparation, research, and innovation. Humanity had learned that strength and knowledge were the keys to survival and independence. By now, humanity had become more than just a survivor species. They had transformed exile into opportunity. The planet and its surrounding moons were flourishing, technology was advancing, and society was organized, fair, and united. Children grew up with a sense of purpose, knowing they were part of a civilization that had turned adversity into strength. The mistakes of the past, the exile, and the dangers of the void had created a people who were resilient, wise, and ready for anything the universe could throw at them. The achievements of these years were celebrated quietly, in daily life and through ceremonies that honored discovery, community, and learning. Humanity had learned to value cooperation over conflict, curiosity over fear, and unity over division. Every challenge had been met not just with strength, but with ingenuity and compassion. The planet that had been chosen as a temporary refuge. Life on the new planet had settled into a rhythm, yet humanity never stopped looking beyond. Even as settlements thrived and communities grew stronger, whispers of the galaxy beyond reached them. The void they had once crossed still stretched endlessly, filled with stars, planets, and mysteries. Scientists monitored distant signals picked up from the far edges of known space. Some were natural phenomena, but others hinted at life or perhaps at the civilizations that had once dominated regions long before humanity had appeared. One day, a research team detected unusual activity in a distant cluster of stars. The signals were faint but consistent, carrying patterns that suggested intelligent design. The Council gathered to discuss the findings. Some argued for caution, warning that humanity had survived exile because they avoided unnecessary risks. Others believed the signals could be a chance to reconnect, to learn, and to find allies. After careful debate, a plan was approved. A small reconnaissance mission would investigate, but the main settlements would remain secure and self-sufficient. The team sent on this mission consisted of experienced explorers, scientists, and navigators. They traveled in one of the fleet's most advanced ships, equipped with upgraded engines, shields, and instruments capable of detecting life, energy sources, and technological activity. The journey was long, taking weeks as they crossed systems that no human had ever seen. During this time, families back home followed their progress closely, sharing updates and worrying about potential dangers. Communication with the team was slow, but the anticipation grew with every message dot as the explorers approached the source of the signals. They discovered evidence of another civilization, one that had developed advanced technology but was struggling to survive. Their ships were damaged, and their communications showed signs of desperation. The humans faced a choice: intervene and risk conflict, or observe quietly and gather information. After discussion, they chose a careful balance. They provided guidance on repairs and survival techniques, sharing knowledge that could help the civilization stabilize without imposing dominance or taking control. Back on the home planet, the settlements observed this event with mixed feelings. Some people were proud that humanity could assist without causing harm. Others feared that this exposure could attract attention from entities that might be hostile. Council meetings became filled with debates about responsibility, morality, and long-term strategy. Leaders reminded everyone that humanity's strength lay not just in technology, but in wisdom, cooperation, and restraint. Exile had taught them that power without guidance could lead to disaster. Meanwhile, reports from explorers in other regions of the system revealed new anomalies, planets with strange energy readings, moons with unknown mineral compositions, and signs of life unlike anything on Earth. Scientists studied these carefully, combining curiosity with caution. Teams were sent to catalog flora, fauna, and geological formations, always mindful of environmental balance. Every discovery became a teaching moment, not just for specialists, but for the children growing up in settlements who would one day carry humanity's legacy further into the galaxy. The settlements themselves continued to evolve. Farms expanded, energy systems improved, and transportation networks connected distant communities more efficiently. Engineers created automated systems to manage resources, freeing humans to focus on innovation, research, and creative pursuits. Education thrived, with schools, workshops, and laboratories offering knowledge across generations. Children learned about Earth, the journey through the void, and their planet's unique ecology, while also being encouraged to explore, experiment, and ask questions. As the civilization grew stronger, so did its culture. Festivals celebrated not only milestones in technology and exploration, but also the bonds of community. Music, storytelling, and art flourished, reflecting the wonder of the New World and the lessons of exile. Elders shared stories of fear, hope, and perseverance, teaching younger generations the value of courage and unity. These cultural practices strengthened the social fabric, reminding people that humanity's identity was not just survival, but shared experience, creativity, and empathy. Despite the flourishing society, the shadow of the Galactic Council remained in human consciousness. Some wondered if the Council had noticed their growing strength and influence. Others speculated about factions within the Council that might be watching, some with curiosity, some with fear. While there was no immediate threat, the possibility prompted careful planning. The Council emphasized preparation, technological advancement, and readiness, but never paranoia. Humanity had learned that foresight and measured action were far more effective than impulsive fear or revenge. Communication with the distant civilization revealed that other regions of the galaxy were unstable. Political struggles, resource shortages, and conflicts between species created chaos in places once controlled by powerful councils. Some of these disturbances mirrored humanity's own experiences, reminding them of the fragility of civilizations. Observing from afar, humans realized that exile had not only made them stronger, but also wiser. They had survived because they had relied on cooperation, adaptability, and the careful use of power, rather than conquest or domination. As the fleet and settlements continued to expand, humans began to explore the edges of the galaxy itself. Scouts discovered systems with habitable planets, moons rich in resources, and environments suitable for research and experimentation. Colonies were established carefully, always maintaining sustainability and respect for local ecosystems. Every new settlement became a model for how humanity could thrive without repeating the mistakes of the past. Leadership across these settlements remained collaborative, ensuring that knowledge, responsibility, and resources were shared fairly. Humanity's growing influence did not go unnoticed. Signals from regions near the Council began appearing more frequently. Some were attempts at communication, others were warnings or probes. While the messages were not hostile, they reminded humans that the galaxy remained a complex web of civilizations, each with its own interests, fears, and ambitions. The Council emphasized diplomacy, knowledge sharing, and preparation, teaching that true strength lay not in domination, but in understanding, restraint, and strategic collaboration. Meanwhile, the settlers faced challenges of their own. Environmental hazards, equipment failures, and occasional illness tested the community's resilience. But unlike in the early days of exile, the society had systems in place to respond quickly. Medical teams, engineers, and community organizers worked together seamlessly. Solutions were shared, mistakes analyzed, and improvements implemented. The hardships, once frightening, became opportunities to demonstrate the effectiveness of cooperation, learning, and foresight. Over time, humanity began to define itself in a new way. Exile had once been a punishment, a removal from the galaxy they had known. But now, it had become a catalyst for growth, innovation, and self-understanding. Humans understood that survival alone was not enough. They had to thrive, adapt, and prepare for a future where their influence could be positive rather than destructive. Children learned this as part of daily life, observing adults who balanced curiosity with caution, creativity with responsibility, and ambition with ethics. One day, scouts discovered a distant star system showing signs of advanced technology but completely abandoned. Structures floated silently in space, energy sources flickering intermittently. Scholars theorized that a civilization had once existed there, but vanished for unknown reasons. Exploration teams carefully studied the remnants, extracting knowledge while preserving the integrity of the system. These discoveries reinforced the idea that civilizations, no matter how powerful, could fail without wisdom, cooperation, and foresight. Humanity's own journey had been shaped by such lessons, and they were determined not to repeat the mistakes of the past. In the midst of expansion and discovery, humanity never lost touch with its culture and identity. Communities celebrated the seasons, harvests, and achievements with festivals, music, and storytelling. Children grew up learning not just science and survival, but also empathy, creativity, and the value of collaboration. Elders shared memories of Earth, exile, and the journey through the void, teaching that resilience, courage, and unity were more important than strength or domination. The distant signals from the Council space continued, sometimes causing worry, sometimes curiosity. Some humans speculated whether the Council had learned of their success and was considering how to respond. Others believed it was irrelevant. Humanity had already defined its own path. In Council meetings, leaders emphasized preparation and observation, teaching that strength was not measured by fear or revenge, but by the ability to act wisely, decisively, and with foresight taught by now. Humanity had transformed from exiles into explorers, innovators, and architects of a new civilization. The planet they had settled, along with nearby moons and colonies, had become a thriving network of communities connected by shared knowledge, culture, and purpose. Technology advanced rapidly, education flourished, and society emphasized cooperation, fairness, and shared responsibility. Humanity was no longer defined by exile or weakness. They were defined by courage, creativity, and the wisdom earned through hardship. Years had passed since humanity had first been exiled from the Galactic Council. The planet they had discovered, along with nearby moons and colonies, had grown into a thriving civilization. Humans were no longer exiles. They were explorers, innovators, builders, and thinkers. Every community had learned to live in harmony with the planet, to share resources, and to use technology wisely. Children who had been born after the exile had never seen Earth, yet they felt a deep connection to their history through stories, lessons, and culture. But humanity's curiosity and ambition remained. Beyond their system lay the vast galaxy, home to civilizations they had only heard of, some friendly, some powerful, and some potentially dangerous. Humans knew that to survive and thrive, they needed to understand the universe, to prepare, and to define their place in it. Their technology had advanced far beyond the Council's expectations, and their society had become stronger, fairer, and more united than any they had left behind. One day, scouts discovered a system that radiated signs of advanced civilization. Massive structures floated around the planets, some showing faint energy readings. It was clear that this system had once been inhabited, possibly by a species more advanced than humanity. The Council of Leaders debated the approach. Some argued for careful observation. Others wanted to send envoys to make contact. They all agreed on one principle: humanity would approach with knowledge, wisdom, and respect, not force. Exile had taught them that power without restraint could destroy everything. A team of envoys, diplomats, and scientists prepared for the journey. They traveled in one of the fleet's largest and most advanced ships, equipped with technology that could analyze energy signatures, communicate across vast distances, and adapt to unknown environments. The people back home watched the mission closely, proud of the courage, skill, and responsibility their civilization was showing. This mission was more than exploration. It was humanity's chance to prove that they had learned the lessons of Exiled. As they approached the system, the envoys discovered ruins and damaged ships floating in orbit. The structures were impressive, far beyond anything humanity had built, yet they seemed abandoned. Through careful scanning, they detected faint energy signals, suggesting that some life might remain, but that the civilization was struggling or hidden. Humans approached with caution, ensuring that no harm would come from their presence. They analyzed the ruins, recording technology, materials, and patterns of use. Every piece of knowledge was carefully documented to be shared with the settlements back home. Through the scans, they discovered messages left behind, warning of a dangerous force that had disrupted the civilization. It was unclear whether this force was natural or caused by other civilizations, but the evidence was unmistakable. The system had suffered a collapse. The envoys realized that even the most advanced civilizations could fail without foresight, cooperation, and care. Humanity's own history of exile had given them the wisdom to avoid repeating such mistakes. Meanwhile, back in their home system, humanity's leaders were preparing for the next stage. Communication networks connected all settlements, ensuring that knowledge from the mission could be shared immediately. Scientists studied the discoveries, engineers adapted technologies, and strategists planned for expansion. Humanity's civilization was no longer confined to a single planet. It was a network of thriving communities capable of learning, innovating, and growing together. As exploration continued, signals from the Galactic Council became more frequent. Humans could detect patrols and observers, yet no hostile action was taken. It seemed the Council was watching, curious about how humanity had survived, grown, and expanded. This attention reminded leaders of the importance of diplomacy. Humanity had been cast out once, and they had survived because they acted with intelligence and restraint. They understood that the Council might not trust them, but they could show through action, not words. that humans had become a force guided by wisdom and responsibility. The envoy's mission eventually led them to a planet where survivors of the advanced civilization were still living in small, scattered communities. They were wary of outsiders, having faced collapse and betrayal. Humans approached slowly, offering help and sharing knowledge rather than demanding cooperation. Over time, trust grew. Engineers helped repair infrastructure, scientists provided tools for agriculture and energy, and teachers worked with children to rebuild education systems. The survivors began to see humanity not as a threat, but as partners. This interaction changed humanity's perspective as well. They realized that strength was not in domination, but in cooperation, respect, and shared purpose. The lessons of exile, humility, perseverance, and unity had become guiding principles, allowing humans to connect with other civilizations in ways the Council had never anticipated. Diplomacy and mutual benefit became central to humanity's approach in the galaxy. Back home, settlements celebrated the success of the mission. Knowledge gained from the ruins and survivors fueled technological advancements, cultural development, and social growth. Children studied history and science, learning that cooperation, responsibility, and curiosity were keys to survival and progress. Adults reflected on how far humanity had come since the dark days of exile, realizing that every challenge they had faced had shaped them into a civilization capable of greatness. As humanity continued to explore and build alliances, they began to define a vision for their future. They were no longer merely survivors. They were architects of an empire built not on conquest or fear, but on knowledge, cooperation, and creativity. Systems were surveyed for potential settlements, moons were prepared for safe habitation, and fleets were upgraded to ensure both defense and exploration. Humanity had grown into a civilization that could survive in the galaxy while staying true to the values forged in exile. The Galactic Council eventually made contact. Delegates arrived cautiously, observing humanity's systems, settlements, and interactions with other civilizations. They were surprised by what they found: thriving communities, advanced technology, and a society organized by fairness, collaboration, and wisdom. Humans did not approach the Council with aggression or demand recognition. Instead, they demonstrated through action that they had grown beyond exile, becoming a civilization worthy of respect. Meetings with the Council were tense at first. Delegates questioned humanity's motives, tested their knowledge, and observed their behavior. But humans remained consistent, calm, wise, and cooperative. They shared discoveries, helped repair damaged systems, and offered to exchange knowledge and resources. Slowly, the Council realized that humanity had not only survived exile, but had transformed it into an opportunity for growth, learning, and leadership. This recognition did not come easily. Some members of the Council were skeptical, believing that humans might still be unpredictable. But repeated demonstrations of wisdom, restraint, and cooperation gradually earned trust. Humans had become a model for what could be achieved when adversity is met with unity, intelligence, and creativity. They had turned exile into a story of triumph, inspiring other civilizations across the galaxy. Humanity's empire, though still young, became a beacon. Other civilizations sought alliances, guidance, and collaboration. Humans shared technology, explored uncharted systems, and fostered communities that valued knowledge, ethics, and innovation. Their society had learned the lessons of failure, fear, and exile, and now they were teaching those lessons to others. Leadership, culture, and education all reflected the understanding that true strength lay not in power, but in responsibility, empathy, and shared purpose. The people of the home planet and its colonies reflected on the long journey that had brought them here. They remembered the fear of exile, the uncertainty of the void, and the challenges of building a new home. They also remembered the courage, resilience, and cooperation that had allowed them to survive. Every settlement, every discovery, and every achievement was a testament to humanity's ability to grow stronger in the face of adversity. Children who had never seen Earth grew up knowing the story of exile, not as a tragedy, but as a foundation for greatness. They learned that survival was only the first step, and that wisdom, cooperation, and courage could turn any challenge into an opportunity. Education emphasized critical thinking, ethics, exploration, and creativity. Every generation built on the knowledge and experience of those who had faced exile and had transformed it into a thriving civilization. As humanity looked to the stars, they realized that exile had been both an ending and a beginning. It had forced them out of the galaxy they had known, but it had also forged them into something greater. They had survived, adapted, and learned. They had discovered new worlds, built thriving communities, and formed alliances with civilizations they had never imagined. The lessons of the past were now a guiding force, shaping a future full of possibilities. The Galactic Council, once judges and exilers, now observed humanity with a mixture of respect and caution. Humans had shown that adversity could be transformed into growth, fear into curiosity, and exile into opportunity. They had become a civilization capable of shaping the galaxy through wisdom, cooperation, and innovation. The empire they were building was not founded on conquest, but on understanding.